So let's start here. Why do you want to test? I think is a good question. I have the luxury of seeing a lot of different Angular code bases. I probably work on about 12 to 15 different Angular projects a year, sometimes for months, sometimes only for days. But all of them I've committed code to into master. So I get to see lots of different teams and what they're doing. And the reality is I think it would probably be less than a third of the teams that I get to work with actually are writing tests. And
I would imagine, yeah.
yeah.
That doesn't actually surprise me, to be honest.
No, it's not surprising. I think if you've worked in software, it's just the reality. And I think I see more people testing their back end for sure, because I think they go, well, no, but it's my business logic. I need to add payment X and Y together.
Yeah, but if your front end doesn't allow you to do any payments, then you're screwed anyway.
Yeah, but people are like, oh, if I can't click the button, then it's kind of obvious. I'll fix it. So why write a test for that?
Yeah.
But it kind of gets murky on those things. And if you have the chance to work in a code base where you have got a lot of front end tests, you can get a chance to make a decision for yourself as well, because it's kind of arbitrary until then. But there's a few main reasons that people like to test. I guess the first one is that it guards against regression. So you've written your code, and then now you need to extend your code, add a new feature, and what do you do with all the other stuff that it interacted with? Do you go and manually test all that again?
Well, you'd have to if you don't have tests.
Exactly.
Or just
cross your fingers, yeah.
But that's not going to work either, right?
No.
We know that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. And a lot of people do a lot of manual testing. And, a lot of the projects that I've been on, you'll have a tester, a couple of devs, and a business analyst and a scrum master, but that tester's always there, and they hold like a half-time to a full-time role just to manage this regression.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So being able to know that your code base is being run every time you change something can help with that regression.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do testing for maintenance in my world, because I don't like doing maintenance. I hate doing maintenance on code. So if I write tests around things and I change something and something breaks, there's less maintenance for me, because I know exactly where to go and fix it, right?
Yeah. I think this is probably one of the bigger ones. It's like maintenance or being able to sleep at night. I think kind of the same thing. Like you make big changes and you want to, it's going to end up in production.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to know that I refactored this, this name across 1,000 files and.
Well, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I agree. Regression testing is not fun.
And then another big positive for writing tests is that it documents your intent. If you can open up a Angular component that describes part of a page and some of the UI, and you can read the test and you go, okay, well, these are the things that this is meant to do. It's like documentation. I can see that there's tests around here that this page should be able to load a list of users and should be able to submit a form, and the form should not be valid in a certain state and so forth. So there's a lot of benefit around kind of documenting intent. Me more the first one here that is the big benefit for me, even though that's another benefit, is that kind of documentation.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's kind of like, you can do comments in your code, but if you name everything properly, you need less comments. If you have a well-written test where you don't need to comment your code in the same way as well, it all helps.
Yeah. And then the final one here is, I guess testing bad code is harder than testing good code. So it shines a harsh light on the way that you're writing code and kind of encourages you to write much more testable code, which ends up being more loosely coupled and a much better design. So it can really help, especially around tricky code. I find this that kind of back and forth to the browser is one thing, rather than having to go run your whole application, navigate back to the page, fill in the form and then check.
Yes.
You kind of get that quick iteration in your code base, but you also kind of go, well, it's really hard to test this, because if I call this function, I actually get returned something too big too soon because it's doing too many things. I'll break it out into separate functions, and then I can test just this function, and then the next developer along can go, well, that's easy to read because it's like this, has 4 functions, and these 4 functions add up to the sum of this work versus just one function that just goes,
true.
whoa.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I've always found hard about testing is like, where do I actually start? Because you don't want to, as you said, you reveal some mistake in design, because if you can't test a component, it's probably because you haven't designed it right.
Yeah. Yep.
Or it could also be that you just don't know exactly where to start testing, but that's why we're here. But it's a good point. And it's something I think most people don't kind of use tests for.
Yeah. Yeah.
It quickly becomes, no, I've already designed it. I know what it's doing, and I know this is right. And then the test becomes more about making sure things don't break afterwards.
That's totally fine. I'd still be really excited to have a test over the code to know, someone's written it and they expect it to behave like this, even if it's not perfect. It's still better than not.
But I think I'm saying that it's rare that that's the intent, but it's a good benefit from it.
It is a good benefit of it. Yeah, testing, it's an interesting thing to also think about, like, people, why they might not test and why they would test. And I think one of the problems I see in teams is that they haven't, like, testing is hard at first. Like, I talk about the learning curve of learning something like RxJS, which is observables for JavaScript. The learning curve for that's kind of like really steep, and then it kind of plateaus a bit, and then it goes really steep again and plateaus and goes steep again and plateaus, and it just goes on like months. It goes on for months, and then you're finally getting it, and then you're like, oh no, I don't get it. You're back to the docs. So that journey is really long and quite tricky. And then you've got other things like NGRX, where you've got another journey that can be a little shorter, but it's quite tough. But it still goes on for weeks. But testing's like this vertical learning, and it's just really tricky. But then it's over.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've done a couple of days of it and I've seen the most common things I'll need to do to fake something, and why my test is failing because it's missing something, or how do I wait for the page to have this data because it's asynchronous and I need to pause. And once you've gotten a few of those patterns in place and you go past that learning curve, you're like, well, it's just the same, a lot of copy and paste.
So you only got a couple of hours to go and you go,
yeah,
thanks.
And we're going to get you over most of those big learning hurdles now. But it is definitely what I've found probably the shortest, hardest part of learning Angular.
Yeah.
I do a lot of Angular, and I found the testing the trickiest bit because you kind of have to understand what's happening under the covers around like lifecycle hooks and the synchronous nature of when this loads and that loads, and where did I actually get the code to be able to navigate. I just imported this big module, but now I need to know which part of that module is doing stuff so I can then replace it with my own fake in my test. So I'm going to make it easy today, but it's...
it's a continuous learning experience, I guess.
Yeah.